We love the children of Africa, teaching the children. Oh, da 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 da, la da da da. Oi, black eye, black hair, black skin, black queen, stand majestic with the black king. Today I'll sing you a black song. You need to hear about beautiful black things. Cause most time we hear about black, we hear about black magic and black witches. Black list, black book, black market, Black Friday, you spend off your black riches. I've never seen a doctor in black, nor seen a black pill for cure no black.
Alkebulan Fine Art Gallery, in collaboration with the Africa Liberation Movement, presents iconographical art in mixed medium. Mama Africa. Symbolizing Mama Africa, its culture of primacy, of matriarchy, a record that even after the Maafa of over 500 years, Yoruba is unable to obliterate the Kemetic gene code, demonstrating the potential rebirth and authentic African culture, scientific, philosophical, technological, and spiritual expression both now and in the future, in the continent as well as the diaspora. The evolution of Mother Africa's complex personality, beauty, femininity, alluring, mysterious, confidence, nurturing, wisdom encrypted in melanin. The Akoben heralds revolution and the magnificent Afro interspersion with the lion's mane, the militancy of the goddess Sekhmet. Left foot forward, symbolizing Queen Mother and divine kingship. We are looking now at Mama Africa, Mother Africa. In her young form, nevertheless, we look at her contents and what her prescription is for us at this time. As we can see in her hand, I was not born in Africa. Africa was born in me. And in many senses, this applies to each and every one of us who are Africans, whether we are on the continent or in the diaspora. Africa is within us, within our genetic memory. But unfortunately, the curriculum to which we have been exposed have gone above and beyond the call of duty, combination of the church and the state to distance us. That is what we would call now cultural distancing from ourselves. Unfortunately, this is what she is representing, what we would ideally want to be or what we potentially can become. And when we look, we can see adorning the surroundings the name of some of those among us who have struggled and tried and made efforts in this redemptive process. We have seen Bookman,
Malcolm X,
Dessalines,
Marcus Garvey,
Paul Robeson,
Chicanto Dio,
Douglas, Frederick Douglass, Public Enemy. We have seen Bogle, Brandon Nani, Malcolm X, and so John G. Jackson, and all of these are among those that are very critical to our position of liberation, to the degree that we have achieved that liberation. We owe them a great depth of gratitude and stand in the shadow or in the light of their enlightenment, that we too may absorb some of that light and continue to illuminate the path for others to come. And it is significant that we should see Bookman among them, because I don't think any of them are as old as Bookman.
Yes, and Bookman, as we know, was in Jamaica here.
Yes.
And he was a revolutionary figure who fought against British colonialism.
Yes.
And when he was surrounded by the British soldiers, he fled to Haiti and galvanized Dessalines,
Yes.
Christophe,
Right.
Toussaint Louverture,
Yes.
and they repaired to the hills where they formed the army that subsequently conquered Britain, the Americas, and the French in
And
combined
the Spanish.
operational warfare,
Yes.
and even the Spanish.
Even the Spanish was not spared. My brother, what you touch on is a very important and salient point, because the Haitian Revolution resulted in Haiti being the first black independent nation in the entire hemisphere. And when they succeeded under Dessalines, Dessalines declared that this was a safe haven for Africans from anywhere on the planet Earth. Once you're in Haiti, you're a free person.
And imagine, we used to seek political and economic asylum in Haiti. And when the Americas, Britain, and French would not take their foot out of the neck of the Asians, and they fled to Jamaica for us to give them equal asylum, we sometimes turn them back to sea,
Wow,
to the sharks.
That was painful to watch.
Because those who hold us in contempt don't want Haiti to be seen as the military capital of the Caribbean.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. When we look at the adornment of our black princess, it seems to me that some of the adornments, is epitomized by the lion mane. Could we just elaborate a little bit on that? Because I have seen dresses of the Emperor Haile Selassie where he also has the lion mane
Yes.
that is adorning, his headwear.
Well, the lion is very symbolic. We do not necessarily think the lion is the king of the jungle because a prairie animal, he doesn't go to the jungle. However, because of the strength and the authority of the lion, those of us who take on that kind of posture in our revolutionary move towards freeing of ourselves from the claws of the conquerors.
Yes.
We can see how even early Jamaica, the Rasta who call themselves Lion,
Yes. Yes.
and even coming from the book of the Black Heart movement,
Yes.
which is melanin blood,
Yes.
it was attacked. And our early Rastafari decide, look, and even present right, because there's no early and late Rastafari, it's a tribe
Mhm.
that taught us a lot of things. The way we prepare our meals, it is one of the motivating movement of food for life.
Yes.
was directed by the Rasta man.
Yes.
And he refused to even wear things that was forced upon us by our conquerors. So they didn't really want to consume the conqueror's culture. Shearer would say, kill first and ask question last, which lead to the
Coral Garden.
Coral Garden strategy. And
Massa
so
got there.
So as we can see, there's even the embodiment of some of our legendary reggae artists
Yes. Yes. Yes.
feature in our
Featuring, we see there Bob Marley is recognizable.
yes. And then we
Peter
have a
Tosh.
Burning Spear. We have Toots.
Dennis Brown.
Yes. And we have from Africa, Fela Kuti,
Fela Kuti.
and then Jimmy Cliff,
Jimmy Cliff.
and so on. So yes, it's a work that I liked.
Yes.
Some of those artists whose lyrical content represent social evolution
Yes.
that counteract cultural imperialism.
Right. Well, that is very interesting. And going back to Mama Africa and what you said about posture, and you talk about the lion mane, I think this because the lion naturally is found nowhere else except on the continent of Africa. That's why Europe is filled with a lot of stone lions, and are those who they capture and put in the zoo. But interestingly enough, the lion is neither the biggest or the heaviest animal that is out there. But they say what differs him from the rest is his attitude. So when you said posture, it struck a chord that we must have a change of attitude based upon these type of our natural culture which will empower us. And another thing again, the oldest symbol in Kemet and in the world in general that still stands today is what the Greeks call the Sphinx. Ra-Horakhti,
Yes.
which is the image of a lion.
Yes.
You see the head of a man, the body of a lion. And so it represents, it is over 10,000 years old as far as we know by conservative measures. The infidel Napoleon went there in 1798, and when he looked up and saw the magnificence and grandeur of what was a representative of Mother Africa, he was infuriated, and he commanded his soldiers to fire to lick off the nose, and it took them 21 salvos of the cannon. And so that's how the 21 gun salute came about, where Napoleon was defeated in his effort to deface the Lion of Africa, and he left defeated. And until today, Mama Africa still stands despite the beatings and the batterings, and remains until today unconquered still.
Urugu.
Urugu has been defeated.
Yes.
Urugu
has
has
been
defeated.
defeated.
Yes. Uhuru.
Shem Hotep.
Shem Hotep. Hotep.
Hotep, welcome to the Al-Kibulan Fine Art Gallery. The Al-Kibulan Fine Art Gallery, in collaboration with the African Liberation Movement, presents iconographical artwork in mixed media. The Al-Kibulan art look into our ancient eye culture, civilization, and spirituality. Our civilization was destroyed by slavery, imperialism, Berlin Conference, capitalism, Jim Crowism, religion, and so-called democracy. We see Pan-Africanism as a rescue vehicle to liberate us and restore our spirituality and freedom.
I always come with a certain hesitation to lecture on black women in antiquity, because difficult as it has been to rescue the black as such from antiquity, in the light of all that has been done to suppress and obscure that history, it has become even more difficult to rescue the black woman from antiquity. In the same way in which we have found an attempt by the white to overwhelm the black and to put a shadow over the black, we have found in many cultures and civilizations of the world an attempt to put the woman under the shadow of man's ego. This has not been so in Africa as it has been in Europe and Asia. I'm not going to present to you some idyllic story of the African respect for the woman. It is rooted not in simple idyllic legends, it is rooted in a profound creation myth. We have been taught, and perhaps it was just a symbolic story or an allegorical fable, but we have been taught that man began in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Now that story, like the beginnings of man in the Bible, is not supposed to be taken literally, because man has no knowledge of how he began, except on this planet. Man has no knowledge about how the universe began. Within the last few years, we have come very close to understanding how the universe began. Bell Labs, some years ago, found the noise that is behind the universe, a noise that will never pass, because that represents, they say, the bang, the first big bang out of which this universe came, the tremendous explosion of the universe. But the more we look at the universe, the more we become aware of its extraordinary complexity and its extraordinary size. Last week, it was discovered, in fact, that we have only observed or have only intuited 1/10 of the mass in the universe. However, in spite of the mystery and the magic that still surrounds us, one thing we are very clear about now: we do know how man came on this planet, and we do know beyond the shadow of a doubt that that first man was African. And we do know now something further which is far more important, and that is that all creatures now living on the earth that are called Homo sapiens sapiens come from a black woman of about 120 to 140,000 years ago. Just a few years ago, this was not known. This is very, very recent. We have known for a long time that humankind, man and woman, was born in Africa. That does not mean a thing. Apes were born in Africa too. So that by itself meant absolutely nothing. What we have recently discovered is far, far more important. What they have discovered is that not only the first man and woman was born in Africa, but the last man, the last stage of man and woman was born in Africa. There are 6 stages in the development of humankind, and if I use the term man, forgive me, it is not sexist, it's a habit. There are 6 stages in the development of man, and it was assumed that man came out of Africa at a very primitive, low-level stage, and then he evolved the highest stage in Europe and Asia. So that when I was going to university, if it were ever raised that man was born in Africa, my professor, whether he was in Europe or America, would say, fine, we all know that, we all accept that, but that doesn't mean that they're equal. All it means is that man came out at a very crude, incomplete stage, black, yes, but then he emerged into higher refined white type, which developed civilization and then brought it back to the unfortunate, benighted barbarians in Africa. So that the fact that man was born in Africa was not anything of lasting significance. Then came an extraordinary study which was only published about 1.5 years ago. Oxford, of all places, Oxford, one of the most conservative universities in the world, one of the first universities in Europe, published a study from 11 doctors which claimed with scientific precision that there was now no doubt that the African provided the founding population of the modern world. In other words, the last man on earth, the final stage of man, the most evolved stage of man, carrying the brain case of modern man with the size and convolutions of the brain of modern man, was an African. And since then, studies have come out of Hawaii, studies have come out of California, which shows that a black woman mothered all people on the planet at this time. And they have been able to trace it through blood studies, DNA, analysis of DNA polymorphisms, and they could show you that the black woman carries everything no other woman does. She carries every element. There is a certain stage at which there's a break-off, and one of those elements is just resides in her. It doesn't reside in other people. It doesn't make them inferior, but it makes it quite clear that they are branches, mutations, extensions of that central woman. Hence the myth we have in the Bible, and we are not attacking the Bible, because you have to understand it was necessary for the early patriarchs who wrote the Bible. And the Bible is full of truth, historical truth. Do not dismiss it. But it was necessary for the early patriarchs who had no idea of what had happened, who had no idea about beginnings, and who assumed that their theories and assumptions came to them from God above. It was only natural for them to assume, since they were in charge and they were male, that God created the male first, and then he took a rib out of the complex male and made woman. Woman, in fact, is physiologically more complex than the male. Hence, women cannot come out of men. Eve cannot come out of Adam. Only Adam can come out of Eve. The Africans did not have that absurd theory of events. The Africans had created the myth of Isis and Osiris. Isis and Osiris, unlike Adam and Eve, gives you a vision of the completeness of the human through the equality of the male and the female. God is not a man. God is not a woman. God comprises both. And the strange story of Isis, the great black goddess searching for Osiris, the great black god, is that you find that Set, which became the prototype for Satan, that's African, by the way. All of these concepts are created, strangely enough. We find it after so many hundreds of years in Africa. Satan is Egyptian. Satan is a force, the dark force, the evil force. Let me not use words like dark, the evil force. Satan destroys Osiris, and he's split into many pieces, and Isis goes searching for Osiris, and she finds most of the pieces, but there is one piece missing. We need not name that piece. It is the piece that is absent in woman and present in man. But that piece cannot make sense without woman. In other words, that piece is what completes them. So that it is not as if you have the great male god and the inferior female god. She becomes the sister, the wife, the mother. She is all that is female in the female principle of the universe, and he is all that is the male principle of the universe, which completes the universe in order to create life. So that you have a vision of creation complete through the woman that you do not find in the early absurd imaginative version that you find in the Adam and Eve myth. That Adam and Eve myth, interpreted as it was later on in history, led to profound conceptions of the woman as inferior, and sometimes in some civilizations as essentially evil. So she's supposed to be the great seductress, the weaker kind, etc. This was not the case in the African mythology. So that you already had a divine myth which gave a basis. It was a sort of bedrock for a reality that could give the woman greater freedom and power. It is not an accident, therefore, that many of the goddesses of the Europeans were black. They could have chosen their own women, they chose some of their own women, but the most important goddesses were black. Not just for the African now, in the civilization of the Greek, The Greek was so profoundly affected by the Africans that the goddess of chastity was a black woman, Artemis. The goddess of wisdom was a black woman, Minerva. The goddess of beauty was a black woman, Diana. And many of their great mythological figures which were critical to the vision of history, the history of the Greeks in the Odyssey, the woman who draws, who has the power to draw Odysseus and all his crew into her, is Circe, who is represented as a black woman with African features on the Greek vases. The woman who helps Jason win the golden fleece is a black woman, Medea. The woman who marries Perseus, the Greek hero, is a black woman, Andromeda. If you see them represented in Hollywood, they're all white. But if you go back to the original vases, the original art of the Greeks, you will find that the only women they could find to represent the finest attributes in the feminine world were black women. Actual black women. They were literally living black women in Ethiopia who were made into legendary goddesses in Greece. That first invasion of Africa by Europe was not an invasion like the invasions that occurred later. The European was startled by the advances of the African. So startled that Alexander decided to build his capital in Africa rather than go back into Europe. And every major Greek thinker, Thales of Miletus, Democritus, Pythagoras, Eudoxus, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Heraclitus, they all came down. Plato, all of them came into Egypt. And those who did not come claimed they came because it was so prestigious. And they therefore saw women differently. In this new edition of Black Women in Antiquity, there is a remarkable woman called Hypatia. For a long time we thought she was a Greek woman, until Beatrice Lumpkin, doing studies in the rights of women in ancient Greece, found that black women had power and freedoms that the white woman was not allowed. The Greek woman could not head a department in a university, but she could in Egypt. She could not pursue a scientific pursuit without a companion or someone in charge of her. It was possible in Egypt, so that when she studied Hypatia and the freedoms Hypatia had and the kind of work she was doing, it was easy to come to the conclusion no Greek woman at the time was allowed those opportunities. And in that Alexandrian world where you have a mix later of the Greek and the African, you find the African woman has certain advantages that the Greek woman does not have and was not to have for a long time to come.
To purchase your copy of this iconographical artwork, contact us through the Alkebulan Fine Art Gallery, the Portrait Department, at Stanley Portrait Studio at hotmail.com, or phone number 1-876-570-2255. Thank you.
Cannot take away from what's in our DNA. Humankind rooted in the promised land or destiny. It's time to embrace the race. Black is power, black is grace, black is beauty and diversity. Like the stems of a tree, rooted in the soil of Mama Africa. Yeah, we eat the fruit, that's the knowledge that is used. But they don't tell the truth of Mama Africa. Africa. I love your Africa. African, 'cause we are born in Africa. We are African, 'cause Africa is born in us. We are not African, 'cause we are born in Africa. We are African, 'cause Africa is born in us. So take the time to understand the land. Africa in every child, man and woman. Take the time to understand the land. How can you reject the place where human life began? Take the time to understand the land. Africa is part of Jaja plan. Take the time to understand the land of Africa.